All right, well, folks, I'm really excited. I get to bring up a really dear friend, a colleague of mine, a world-leading innovator. This gentleman actually is co-creating some work with us in the space of brain health and genetic health and bacterial well-being. He's one of the smartest guys on the planet that I know, and he actually created an app that was voted #1 mind and brain stress app in 2020. And it's funny every time I'm with him because he has some technology that globally across the world people use in military settings and health and wellness settings, corporate wellness settings, where people listen to his technologies and his tapes. So he jokingly says, I go to bed with more people's wives than anybody else on the planet because when they wear the tech, they hear him when he's sleeping. You understand what I'm saying with that, right? I hope that came off the right way. But anyway, I'm really excited because we're really blessed and really favored to have one of the brightest minds in the brain and health and wellness space. Please help me welcome Dr. Patrick Porter to the stand, please.
Hey, great to be here. It's great to be part of the resistance, right? How many of you feel like you're a superhero and you've already made it through the dark night of the soul? And how many people are still going through it? I mean, I don't want you to show your hands, but just think about it. Every superhero had to go through the dark night of the soul. Most were not born superheroes. Each one of you has inside of you a superhero, but something called stress prevents you from acknowledging it. So when we talk about stress, what it does to the nervous system, and what I really want you to know is that that dark night of the soul is your blessing. Because once you make it through, guess what you get to do? You get to teach, move, and motivate other people in that same situation because no one gets out of here alive, right? They're looking to you. You're here by divine appointment. There's no accidents. There's no happenstance. You're here to hear this message and all the messages you're going to hear today, but then to take that out in the world because knowledge is only power if it's applied. Okay, so let's apply some power today. When we think about your gut, because there's only 3 things that can cause you to have trouble. You already heard about that from Dr. Mertz. And when we think about that, your gut is actually a brain. So don't think about your gut like it's just this thing that metabolizes and digests food. You have more neuron connections in your gut than you do in your brain and your head. But there's another brain that most people forget about, and it's the most important brain, especially when we're in this group. And I'm going to prove to you a few things that maybe some of you don't know. Hopefully, most of you know. But you have a heart brain, 40,000 neutrino cells. That means your brain thinks, has emotions, it drives behavior. That's the brain that we need to wake up in this world. When you live with your heart, you follow your gut, and you use this, I call it a Google tablet up here, because all it does is transmit and receive information. Your heart delivers the real God message to you. So let's begin. Let's start the little conversation here. When we think about something, the National Institute of Health, which is trying to kill us, it seems, right? They actually said in 1994 that we have a biofield. We have a field of energy that comes around all of us, and you don't have to be Jesus or Buddha or any enlightened saint. You have it right now. You are emitting 810 nanometer light. And for those medical doctors in the room and natural medicine practitioners, you know that's a healing frequency of light. That's why when you walk in and you meet somebody and they raise your energy, you actually feel better. We call those gainers. There's also those people we call energy vampires, right? You've probably met them before, right? These are people that drain your energy. They walk in the room, it gets a little darker. You want to be that person when you walk in the room, it's a little bit brighter. Well, we know, actually, if you go to the NIH's website and look this up, they will tell you that all illness starts in the field, not in the tissues. It starts in the field of energy, which is the field of thought. Everything you see in this world, everything you see here, you're sitting on, walking on, was once in someone's imagination. Somebody had to think about it to bring it about. Some of you have the next evolution of what's going to happen. You have to take that image, that belief, but what happens is the stress, the naysayers, the people that tell you you can't do it. When you think, you actually get your gut to respond. So when you think about, there was a study done during COVID, which amazed me, blew my mind. They took people that looked at COVID as a challenge, and they looked at people that looked at it as a threat. What they found out was those people that looked at COVID as a challenge actually transmitted 200 times more light than people that looked at it as a threat. Yeah, so there you go. We want to be that person that shines the light. How many light bulbs does it take to light a room? It takes one. Now there's something, if you look it up, called the Maharishi effect. What they did was they prayed for peace in an area like Washington, D.C. And they said, there's no way you can get that peace to happen. They prayed and they lowered crime, ER visits, and everything. When they stopped, it went right back. You are affecting this world and maybe other worlds by the way you think. But we have to look at this. We have a big challenge ahead of us. We have certain groups that seemingly want to kill us. And it's very evident. So what we need to do is be the group. And what I love is, I think of Dr. Naputi, when he asked me to talk, he said, hell yeah, I'm going to be there, because I know everything he touches turns to gold. You know, and I've seen him before. I've known him for about 17 years now. When he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. And I love people like that, because you probably know people that say, yeah, I'm in it, I'm going to do it, but then they don't act. Faith without works is dead. So we need to do the work. We got to have the faith. We got to do the work. We got to do what's going on. But look, you've got a big challenge ahead of you. It's not a threat. Nobody's going to. You have the potential right now, everyone in this room. You have the potential in this room. Thank you. You have the potential right now to literally live forever. You know, they did a study, and I wrote a paper about this. They did a study at Harvard where they kept a chicken heart alive for 35 years. And the study says if the janitor wouldn't have turned off the lights, those cells would probably still be alive. Your cells are not destined to die. Your cells are destined to rejuvenate. The problem is thoughts, traumas, and toxins. Also, I'm going to talk another level for you, because when we talk about gut health, what causes our gut to respond? How many people think we have a mental health problem in the world? Okay, I'm going to tell you you're wrong. We don't have a mental health problem. We have a physiological problem. 20 minutes of setting, and I'm sorry you're doing this today, you're sitting. 20 minutes of setting is the same thing they say now as smoking one cigarette. Your physiology is designed to move and breathe. Now, when we talk about the brain-gut connection, we have these 5 primary brain waves. And we're not going to get into it. We could have a whole week lecture on this, but I'm going to summarize it for you. These brain waves work like Wi-Fi networks in your body. These Wi-Fi networks actually turn on and off different activities in your body. And give you one example. When we did our study with autism, we found out that autistic kids do not have the alpha brainwave. Once we got their alpha brainwave up to 23%, which is where it should be, 90% of them started speaking with no speech pathologist. That means that your brain already knows what to do. Your cellular system already knows what to do. We are already tapped into the divine field. We simply need to engage in it. Now, it doesn't happen in the state called beta. Beta is a brainwave state of, we call it the reactionary mind. Fear is the biggest deterrent to health. And what did they do to us during 2020? They created fear. So we have to be the voice of opportunity and possibility, right? The 2 brain waves that I want to talk about that really get the gut to work, and I'm going to show you why the gut-brain axis is so important. 98% of all neurotransmitters that you create are made in your gut, not in your brain. Your brain simply instructs the gut what to do. But if you're never taking the time to relax, do some kind of mindfulness practice, and I'm going to show you a couple techniques here today. But when you do those things, if you're not doing those things, you're not giving your body the opportunity to do what it does best. Our body and brain are designed for one thing, to heal itself. We have to get it into the right conditions to do that. That means we can't outthink a bad diet. We all know that. We have to move and breathe, and we have to do some kind of brain fitness. And brain fitness is the 3 brains, not the 1 brain between your ears. It's not doing crossword puzzles. In fact, those actually stress out the brain and do not do any long-term benefit to the brain. They're fun to do, but they're not going to help your brain learn more. We're gonna teach you that. Now, so you know, there's 54 neurotransmitters, but I'm gonna talk about a couple of them. When you get into alpha, like for instance, when you're around family members or friends or coworkers you really love to be around, you've probably heard the expression Einstein said, time works like this. When you're around a beautiful woman for an hour, it seems like a minute. If you're sitting on a hot stove for a minute, it seems like an hour. So it's all your perception, right? What's going on around you. That's because when you're in that pleasure state, you're in a state of alpha. Alpha creates something called acetylcholine. Now, one of the things I'm going to show you is, because we do a lot with light therapy, light, every cell of your body is light. You have mitochondria in your body. It's not only in your gut, in your brain. Your gut and brain have the most mitochondria of any other parts of your body. Mitochondria's whole job is to absorb and transmit light. You are a light bringer, whether you know it or not. You're doing it unconsciously. It's the destiny of every cell. Now, if we feed that cell correctly, we're broadcasting that light, we're healing our community, we're creating what we want. But acetylcholine is triggered naturally in ancient times. One of our biggest problems we're going to talk about a little later in the presentation here is sleep. But I'm going to tell you why we talk about that and what's going on, because our whole lifestyle is counterintuitive to being healthy. If you were in ancient times and it was time to go to bed, you'd start a fire, you would watch the fire burn out. You wouldn't go, you know what, go get a couple more logs. We want to binge watch this log. You don't do that, right? The logs burn out, you go to bed. Those logs actually, and some of you have probably been on a romantic getaway, you start a fire, you get lucky, little Jimmy comes along 9 months later. Because acetylcholine is the feel-good, fall-in-love neurotransmitter. And the most powerful pharmacy is not Walgreens or Walmart. It's you. You can produce 30,000 different neurochemicals with a simple thought. You just need to know the right thought in the right sequence, in the right manner. You can create whatever you want from the inside out. It's not from the outside in. Now let's talk about theta for a minute and why we have this mental health problem we have in the world. Most adults are missing the brainwave called theta. 2/3 of the world isn't sleeping. Our brain goes through cycles. It doesn't just go beta, alpha, theta. These are all happening at one time. And if you are stressed out, angry, upset, does anybody know what's common denominator between all those negative emotions? Lack of breath. Try to breathe and be angry. Try to breathe and be anxious. I have grandkids now, and when little Eli comes running up to me all upset and angry, if I say, stop being angry, he's going to get angrier. But if I just pace his breathing, his anger dissipates because he doesn't know what to do with that emotion. Theta actually triggers something called GABA in the system. Some of you might have heard of, we've done a lot of studies now with psilocybin, ketamine, different psychedelics for the military, for PTSD. And what we found was we get this blast of neuroplasticity, which is your brain's capacity to bring energy to a solution, to a problem. The more energy you have, the better the solution. I believe we live in an energy economy right now. We want to raise people's energy. We want to be the energy being that we are. So when you trigger GABA, that's a precursor to those consciousness states of expanded states of consciousness. When you think of the theta state and creating GABA, it's DMT that it produces. So if you've never heard of DMT, you should read about it. Every cell of your body has it. And when you have a spiritual breakthrough, or you have that spiritual moment, what's happening chemically in your brain is you get this expanded state of consciousness. You start to realize that this little world that we live in isn't all that big a deal. Your problems aren't that big a deal, right? Give yourself an applause, that's true. Imagine you are heir to the universe and you're worried about making a car payment. I mean, the universe at large is laughing. I always tell my grandson when he gets really upset, I said, 100 years, Eli, is that gonna matter? What we're talking about here is making a change that maybe in 100 years they'll remember. That's what you wanna think about. What are you doing today to leave a lasting impression on your family, your friends, your coworkers, that's going to change their life. And I can tell you, my mother, when we got into this was back in the 70s, she went to a healthcare practitioner and she found out that her kids weren't all spazzes. They couldn't handle white flour, sugar, and dyes. So instead of us being all scolded before we went into church, we didn't eat those foods anymore, and we became honor roll students just by changing our diet. Then my dad got into doing something called the Silva method, which is a meditation practice. I spent my childhood setting up seminars, not this big, but little seminars for my dad in Lower Michigan, and we would teach people how to meditate because it makes that big a difference. When you think about how this affects your DNA, how many people know they mapped the human genome, right? We're here talking about it, right? But when they mapped it, they only mapped 1%. You remember reading that? 1%, they said 99% of who you are right now is junk. It's junk DNA. In 2018, they actually found out that junk DNA isn't junk anymore. In fact, every 40 seconds, every DNA pair in your body is changing based on, wait a minute, everything. Okay? They couldn't track it. They didn't have the technology. Every 40 seconds, the people you're around, the books that you read, the supplements you take, the thoughts you think, the language you use, everything is changing right now. You are not the same person that started this day. You're totally different. So don't bring your attitude with you. If it's negative, let it go. The worst thing that can happen, and I love what Wayne Dyer said, he said, never let an old person inhabit your body. You know, and my daughter is 42 now, and she's trying to tell me she's old. I said, Cherie, I would love to have my 42-year-old body back. You know, it's one of those things, you know, it's kind of like age is, you want to be youthful and joyful and know what's going on. So when you do that, what happens is, in that 40 seconds, your body upregulates. So the best possible you shows up. Your attitude controls more than you think. When we do those testings and the screen that Dr. Naputi showed with the brain, that's our technology. We can measure 9 different parameters of your nervous system. And we always 100% see when we have a negative scan, when that brain is a 0 or a 1. And we've seen that. We've seen somebody's brain voltage as low as 3 volts, and it should be 18.1. Still functioning, which amazes me. But every time their family and friends said, you know, they're so negative. Everything is a threat. So the number one thing you can do for gut health is start changing your psychology, because it will change your physiology, and your physiology will change your psychology. All of these things happen, and it happens because we are tuned to the light of our sun. Okay, when you think about light, if you get to bed by 10 o'clock, you might not know this, but if you get to bed by 10 o'clock, you make more melatonin between 10 and 11 than any other time of the day. If you don't get to bed by 11 o'clock, your liver doesn't cleanse as well. At 2 o'clock at night, when your temperature increases 2 degrees and you wake up sweating, thinking you're going through menopause, it's not menopause. It's a brain out of balance. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, when you have a low in temperature, 2 degrees, and you want to go get Starbucks or tea or chocolate, it's because your body is cycling. And I'm talking about men and women. We all have cycles. So we have to learn to move within those cycles and how it works. If we don't, what happens is resistance happens, especially in our physiology, and it shows up in our gut. Irritable bowel syndrome, anybody ever heard of it? It's the #1 cause of missing work in the world. If you're in Europe, they wouldn't give you a pill for it. They would send you to a psychologist because they know it's a thinking problem. It's not a physiological problem because your gut is thinking. You are thinking with your gut all the time. So let's talk about how we can change that, because there's something called cellular resonance. Your body right now is vibrant. You saw that. That was pretty cool video, right, of seeing the inside of the cells. I mean, it looked like a different universe or something. That's happening right now, and there's something called resonancy. So let's say that you and I go to the ocean, or just, let's back up just for a moment. If we were on Dr. Naputi's spacecraft, because he's got to have one to travel around the world like he does, right? So when we're traveling toward Earth, and we look at Earth, Earth is going to resonate at 0.05 to 100. That's the resonant frequency of it. If we go near the ocean, it's going to be 10 hertz. If we go into the mountains, it's 7.8 hertz. Guess what? These are all brain frequencies. And our body is designed, because we were nomads, And even though we have technology, we have cars, we have airplanes, we have all these things, these bodies have not really changed in 200,000 years. Our body will vibrate and resonate with the things that are near us. The people we're near, the house, like mold. If you have mold in your house, you're gonna have a disorder. At first, you're gonna get sick. And a lot of people will then become what they call nose blind. They will no longer smell the problem anymore, like living next to a paper mill. They will omit that. So we want to bring things to people's awareness and realize that this vibratory frequency, what happens. And what we know in our studies is you can use sound to do that. So in our studies, what we showed was we can use binaural beats and isochronic tones to shift and get your body to believe that you're in these physical places, like near the ocean or in a mountain. Even though you're not, your body will vibrate and resonate as if you are, because guess what? Everything is happening inside you right now. I'm not out here for you. I'm in your head, and you're in my head. I'm processing this information, and I'm processing it through my senses. So sound is a very powerful way to create a resonance that will help our gut to calm down and relax. Anybody, if you've never read about something called the Mozart effect, this is what for some reason, this past week, I've been on radio shows and a TV show in Phoenix about the Mozart effect and how it helps with cognitive decline. Because when you listen to Mozart's music, in that Baroque classical music, your brain actually synchronizes to alpha. Your whole brain engages, and your body begins to change and transform just based on that music. So we're gonna see more and more of that, and we're gonna bring more of that here to BioLimitless too. The one that I think is really cool, like when we were just starting the conference and they were putting this up on the screen, I am, all those I am statements and things like that. This is really important because if you've never read the book by Bruce Lipton, Biology of Belief, it's one of my favorite books. We had all of our therapists. I used to have a franchise company, and we had about 1,000 therapists. Every one of them had to read Biology of Belief. It would change your life if you haven't read it. But Bruce Lipton says that words are known to change 3,200 gene expressions. Now, one of the things that if you do a little research on me, you'll find out my dad was a really gifted alcoholic. He was very good at it. Everything could be going really well, and he'd leave 9 kids and go get drunk for a week. But then he found out that he could change his physiology without alcohol, and he never drank again. And that's why I'm standing up here today. So I always tell people, you have no idea, and I've helped millions of people around the world, but if my dad didn't get that help, so one of you in this room might have a kid at home, a little Patrick, that can create something. Because it's like when you make a change, you're changing a whole constellation around you. Now, the reason we like to say this is when you think about gut health and brain health, emotions drive behavior. But if you don't start your day right, there's an expression we use at BrainTap, which is my company. We say, win the morning, win the day. When you get up in the morning, if the first thing you do is have a cup of coffee, hopefully I'm going to change that for you. Coffee should be drank 2 hours after waking up, because if not, you're telling your brain you don't need norepinephrine, cortisol, dopamine. And your brain's ready to deliver that, but you just drank a cup of coffee. You can have it in 2 hours, but let your body wake you up. You just slept all night. Why do you need coffee? We need to improve your sleep, okay? So when you think about when you're physically energized and you look forward to the day, you have the energy to take care of things. If you wake up in the morning, some people don't get out of bed until they have adequate amount of catastrophe in their brain, right? They're just thinking about it, everything that's gonna go wrong, and pretty soon they can't lay there anymore. And they jump up and they get to work, I don't believe that's the way it is. I mean, we are co-creating this world based on our attitudes, beliefs, and actions. We are voting with our actions, not with what we think. How are we voting? So when you think about emotion-driven behavior, if there's a behavior you want to change, I guarantee you it's triggered by an emotion. That emotion started in your gut, not up here. You had an emotional response, your brain interpreted it, so you need to start what we call reframing. Remember, at the very beginning of this talk, every one of you is a superhero. Some of you are still going through the dark night of the soul. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. Figure out the resources you need so you get your cape or you get your mask or whatever you're gonna do to be your superhero self. Because that's right, you're gonna go through it until you learn through it. If you avoid it, guess what? It shows up differently. You get a divorce, you find the same guy or the same gal at the bar, and you're going, wow, I thought I divorced this person. No, because you're putting out a signal. You are broadcasting what and who you are all the time. Now, how many people in here, you don't have to show your hands because this might be too revealing, but I want you to look to your right now. Look at the person to the right, look at the person to the left, and if it's not you sleeping through the night, it's them. Right? Because only 1/3 of the world is getting adequate sleep. And what we found out, we did a study in Australia with coal miners. We found out it wasn't time in bed. That is the biggest misnomer I've ever heard, and we've proved it over 30 studies. It's something called deep sleep. And what they showed in 2015, Scientific America, on page 54, they have a whole article in there you can read where they talk about the glial lymphatic system. The reason I bring that up is they just found out about this system in 2015. How long have we known about physiology in the body? If they didn't even know this existed, because it only activates during level 4 sleep. So we need to get people sleeping again. And it's not about time in bed, because the average coal miner was in bed 10 hours a day before we did the study. Their average time of deep sleep was 1 minute. They had very little REM. REM sleep is what processes your day. So we need to get people sleeping again. And that's key to what we're talking about here. So when we think about our technology and what we're going to bring to BioLimitless, the number one side benefit of what we do is help people sleep. Sleep is when you incubate those superpowers I was telling you about. Because you know, when you wake up in the morning, you're energized, you feel like you could conquer the world, you can have that every morning. And you can have it without an alarm clock. If you're using an alarm clock today, I hope I'm going to motivate you to wake up without it. Or at least change the alarm. Don't make it an alarm, make it a beautiful piece of music. You're arriving back from wherever you came from. You're here by divine appointment. There's angels guarding you, making sure you get back to your body or whatever, right? Something special is going to happen today. Something beautiful is going to happen in your life. And I guarantee you, if you start to believe that, it will happen. Because what we think about, we bring about. It's just a natural law of physics. So and you're bringing it about because you are a magnet attracting all your red blood cells have iron in it. And it's broadcasting energy in a field around you. That field becomes stronger when you feed it positive energy. Your gut will heal itself. Your brain can heal itself. Your body can heal itself. But we need to stay really positive about what we're consuming, what we're thinking, and what we're doing. So when we think about this kind of thinking and what we're talking about, when we talk about, we're going to be calling it BioTap, which is a piece of technology that I helped to invent. And now, I mean, that was back in 1986. Now it's mine because I'm the last one of 6 standing. But in the process of doing this, what we've seen hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people using this around the world. And the problem is that we need you, right? Because most people don't believe that they are this incredible thing. They live by their limitations. So it's up to you to explain to them that you are limitless, right? You're BioLimitless. This is what the whole company's about. So I want to thank you for letting me share with you today, and I want to help you to become BioLimitless. Thank you.
I don't know about you, but I feel good. I don't know about you, but I feel good.